ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
Hey, welcome to Define the Fight. You know, I would say this fine Monday morning, it is. We had a great sunrise, but it is also turning into that fall. There's a little bite in the air. But you know what, better than to have somebody who has a little bite in life? I have an amazing guest who is here today. As we move closer and closer to election, we can feel different shifts. You can feel different energy, different stressors, whether you're watching or not watching. And I think it's important to look at different levels of preparedness, no matter where you're at in your current life or if you've been paying attention or not. I think we can never be over-prepared. We can be under-prepared, but we can never be over-prepared when it comes to life. So joining me today is an amazing individual that I have known for the last X amount of years. He clearly is an expert in so many different ways. I'm just going to give a brief breakdown about John's bio because we're going to dive deep into areas where he has used level of safety for his own life, but also for the lives of others. Because he has spent 27 years in the law enforcement at both the state and federal level, working in the Division of Criminal Investigation and also for the FBI. He's been deployed 3 times in Iraq and then also 3 times in Afghanistan. He is a retired in the United States Marine Corps. He is also the head of I can't even talk today this morning, man. I just have so much I want to say. He's also the head of physical security in the healthcare industry, and he is so much more, you guys. I can't wait for you guys to listen more about John Dalziel's information here because he's a kind human, and not only that, he's been involved in the Brady Oberg Legacy Foundation, and he created the Border to Border Ruck in March to also help with individuals suffering from PTSD and raising awareness of veteran suicide. So, John, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. There's a lot going on there.
Well, you know, the thing is, I'm looking at your bio and I'm like, holy smokes, I want to hit every single point. And, you know, sometimes our mind or our mouth is moving faster than we're actually reading the words, right? So you tend to stumble.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Right. But, you know, I like I said, it's been an honor. It's an honor to know you. But most importantly, too, it's an honor to know that you have a wealth of knowledge that can help individuals that might be stressing in current times. You know, I want to take back, though, and circle back into the past when you were serving, you know, the different things that you learned when you were young, when you first enlisted, that has led you to where you are today.
Well, I think it all goes back to the time when I was in the Marine Corps. It kind of defines you. You're 18, 19 years old, and it defines the path that you're going to take. I got a little bump into it because when I was 20, I was in Beirut. We got blown up. Jack Carr just wrote a great book about it, and which is good because it brings back those 241 guys back to life. So, but it defined my life, how I wanted to move forward and into the protector realm, you know, law enforcement, giving back. Because when I was in the Marine Corps, college, and then my first job with South Dakota DCI, you just get the understanding that being a protector, being a sheepdog, being in law enforcement is a calling, just like being a priest or a teacher. It's those actions and those events have formed me and shaped me into where I am now at 61.
Which is amazing because the thing is, I'm a firm believer that we all have a calling. And sometimes it takes us longer periods of life to define what that mission or what that purpose or calling is. But when it comes to the level of protector, I think we can both agree the fact that there's been such a shift when we're looking at personal safety. When we look at even the community that we live in right now, the level of whether it's crime, so on and so forth, what we've seen, it continues to escalate. And I think it's very important for people to not necessarily rely on protectors, but to become a protector. Wouldn't that be a fair assessment in regards to certain levels, right?
Correct. And I think that's a key point is because, you know, we all are responsible for our own safety. We're responsible for ours and our families. we've come to the point where we've basically subcontracted our personal safety to the police, 911, contract security personnel, when we should be owning it. We are the people responsible. Nobody should care more about your safety than you do.
And you can look at that the same with health, right? We put it in different people's hands instead of taking action within ourselves. Like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm committing to a level so that I am on my A game physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. The same level comes with protection. And you had mentioned protector, but then sheepdog. And I love the term sheepdog, and brings me back to, I went through the sheepdog training. It was X amount of years ago with some of the retired Navy SEALs. And I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about keeping your head on a swivel. They had different codes and different colors in regards to levels of awareness, right? When you're looking out at the horizon, you're, scoping left, scoping right. We also went through the fact of how to move somebody if an active shooter came through. How do you transition and pull people into safety? We went through disarming. We went through clearly different things of firearms. And I know a lot of people have hesitancies when we're looking at gun control. But in my personal opinion, what I feel when it comes to gun control is each individual is responsible for that firearm and going through different types of training for it. But then also, too, I think it's important for people to also learn how to defend it. So if you're going to carry something, you should also know how to protect that and have a level of awareness of, okay, hey, I know that I will never use something unless it comes down to last point where it's either me or them or my children at the end of the day. So for you, when you look at levels of protection and sheepdog, what does sheepdog mean to you?
Guardian, because there are just so many sheep out there, people that aren't paying attention, that aren't, their situational awareness isn't where it should be. Everybody, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but, people are walking around on their phones, headphones in, just oblivious to what's going on around them. So there has to be that person, that group of individuals, men and women out there that are taking that role, because clearly the wolf is at the door. And what are we going to do about it?
And it's a scary thought, because when we look at Fargo-Moorhead, I'm just going to use Fargo-Moorhead as an example. Safe community, it's the Midwest, everybody's nice, here we are, nothing can ever go wrong. And I think we need to start looking and adopting the fact of, yes, we have a great community, but we also have to recognize that it's also changing. Mental health has changed significantly also, whether it's ourselves or other individuals around us. And as things start to heighten in life, cognitive awareness or thinking isn't necessarily what it used to be. So it's very important for us not to walk around feeling like everything's safe, but just to make sure that our level of heightened awareness is also there, because, again, it's dropped significantly.
Yes. The big point is that you should be prepared, but not paranoid. You talk about the colors, and, we use green, yellow, red. You can't live your life at red. You will just burn out. So there are times when you should be red, and there's times when you should be yellow, and there's times when you should be green, so you can recharge, like when you're at home with your family. Yellow, when you're most of the time you should be yellow. You're driving around, you're walking around, but you should be able to go to red, like if you're in, let's say you're in Target and you're leaving and you're going out into the parking lot and you notice somebody by your vehicle. So, it's just to a point that we have to be, and what we talk about at work and when I talk to people about personal safety, is that you have to be prepared, but don't be paranoid, because we can't live like the boogeyman is around every corner, because that's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for our children when they're asking us different questions on how and what we're supposed to do.
Well, and I think that fear factor also subsides too by the fact of going through different scenarios in your head. What would I do? What should I do in this situation? And then also, too, like you said, the more aware you are, the less fear you're going to have, is because you're going to be able to identify something at a faster rate compared to somebody standing right next to my door in a parking lot, right? So when you are actually looking out and surveillancing, you're able to see further down, whether it's the end of the parking lot, right next to the store, or if somebody is starting to impede your spatial area, your boundaries. At that point, now you've got the opportunity to start creating different actions. So it's going down that checklist of situational awareness, spatial awareness, and again, it's moving through that, but it's not living through fear. It's the reality of it. It's just putting yourself in those scenarios before you're in those scenarios so that the fear factor can be dropped down. When we look at assailants or predators or level of attacks, a lot of people think in different areas, whether it's parking lots. Sometimes, a lot of people don't think of at home because that is a safe spot. However, it might not be. But when we look at circling to those stats, why don't you break down when we're looking at levels of attacks and percentages of where they happen?
In 2023, according to the FBI's crime statistics, 16% of all violent crime took place in parking lots or parking facilities, which is the third most common place for assaults to take place.
Which is crazy, but you think about it, who typically does most of the shopping? Now, you had talked or were speaking about prior to with me, different ways that you trained your kids, as they were growing up, on different tips that parents can use. And when we look at men versus women, let's just be honest, there is a difference between men versus women, right? When we look at physical stature, so on and so forth. However, when we look at kids, if you're going solo, it's very easy to protect yourself. However, when you're with your family, now your attention is diverted to different areas. What are some of the things that you did when your kids were growing up, John?
So when we talked about it a lot, because the parking lot is always the most vulnerable place, because you're walking out there as a mother or a father with children and things in the cart. So it's just chaos. We all have been there, done that, and have the t-shirt. So when you're going out to the vehicle, we came up with a game that had where we would play a game on a keyword. You use any sort of keyword that you came, we would, come up with like Viking or something like that, where the game was for the boys to see how fast they could get in the vehicle. So when my wife was out there, if something would happen, so she's with the boys, opens up the back of the Suburban, and then somebody shows up and says, "Can I help you with your groceries to put it in?" And when she says no, the average person is just going to say, "Okay, I just thought I would help," and then walk away. But the predator is going to keep trying to convince her or you that, "No, I can help." So he's going to close the boundary. He's going to get in your personal space and trying to be able to get a hold of you, to get put you in the vehicle, do whatever his or her plans are. So we use the game to be able to, if Andy noticed that the boys could get in the vehicle quick and she could just push the cart at him and go, because at the end of the day, it's just money. Mm-hmm. So to be able to go, because the key is your brain is always your best weapon. Guns, non-lethal, those are tools. And your greatest tool is time and distance, is to get away. There's no sense to engage when you can get away and you're in a parking lot. Andy also had personal alarms.
The e-alert or the e-alarm, yep.
Yeah, that you pull it out and it makes this ear bleeding squeal, high-pitched squeal, and she got it caught on the cart when we were in Cashwise one day, and it was horrible. She was not happy about it, but it's a tool that you can use to ask for help. So if you do that high-pitched squeal, then you can get in the vehicle, shut the doors, always locking the doors, and take off. We'll deal with the groceries later. But it's just having a plan, and that you've rehearsed it a couple times. So we would practice at home. We would practice in the driveway and say, okay, whoever gets in the vehicle first gets a treat, gets a sucker, gets whatever it is. So if, God forbid, that ever happened, that we had been through it once or twice. It's not just yelling at the boys, get in the vehicle, and this guy's trying to help, and you're trying to figure out what you want to do. So it's preparedness, and it's situation awareness, controlling your environment, because only you can control your own environment.
When I know with teaching self-defense, there's always a lot of questions with moms. Well, how do I protect my kid and myself? How do I do this? What if I'm pregnant and I'm trying to protect myself? I said, the reality is this: by you protecting yourself, if you're pregnant, you're protecting your child at the end of the day. But there are different components when you're looking at, okay, what are the number of kids that you have? What are the age of your children? And that is a challenge. So when you're looking at being in a parking lot, let's just throw it out there that, the majority of women are the ones that are probably doing the grocery shopping. Not all, but the majority. The key is also to make sure that if you are the one that is running the errands, do it during the daytime. Avoid things at night. But then recognize, too, that if you are carrying groceries, now you have also taken away your hands. I'm not saying don't carry groceries, because it's a great exercise. Don't get me wrong. But at the same point, it's also making sure that your heightened awareness is increased when your hands are full. You're distracted by your children. You might have 2 or 3-year-olds that are throwing temper tantrums, and it is very easy to take your attention from your surroundings and then putting it directly towards your children. So playing, the games or the lead up for the kids is wonderful. I also speak about the fact of the game of memory. So if you are in a restaurant or if you are out and about, all right, so what was that person wearing? Did they have tattoos? What did their shoes look like, right? Where were their hands? You're giving different descriptions for them. People don't like the word profiling, but I don't think profiling necessarily is bad when you're looking at a level of, situational awareness.
Exactly, because God has given us senses to be able to protect us since caveman. And intuition, our spider sense, you have to trust it. It's there for a reason. It has kept us safe for generations. That you trust your spider sense, trust your intuition, because your intuition is not wrong. It's okay to be rude when your intuition is going off. Can I help you with that? No, I'm okay. Thank you. Well, no, no. I said no. Please leave. You continue. It's okay to be rude when it just doesn't seem right in your memory game. When you're looking around and you're paying attention, it's the middle of the summer here, and there's a dude in a long jacket, stocking cap on, hands in his pockets. Well, the average person just might say, well, maybe he's cold. Well, no, just look at it and say, it just doesn't seem right. So what's the best thing to do? Time and space. Mm-hmm. Walk around. Stay in the building. Don't go around him. Wait for him to come and pass. So it's just have a plan. At the end, if something happens, what you're going to do, what tool are you going to use? Like you said earlier with a firearm. With a firearm, there's 3 main things that are going to happen. 2 of them are bad. 1, you're going to be the hero. That's great. Number 2, you're going to get shot. Or number 3, you're going to go to jail. So you know that it's just a tool. It's the last resort. Are you willing? Have you done enough training? Are you enough confident with it that if you're going to take it out and you're going to break leather with it, are you going to use it, or are you going to just bring it out shaking and the individual's going to take it away from you? So there's a whole lot of less lethal things out there too, but it's just being prepared and knowing your situation. And if you're in the store, when you're in the parking lot, I'm sure Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever they all
text messages, everything,
can wait the 5 minutes to get to the vehicle. So you're just out walking, you're looking around and seeing, what do we have out here? Not always parking close to the building, because that's where the majority of people are, and you don't get the opportunity for time and distance. So it's just, I can't say it enough, is that we bring up is the situational awareness, being able to understand what your environment is, and then, as you said, then figuring out how you define the fight.
100%. Well, because you've got the fight, you've got the flight, and you've got the freeze. And what most people don't recognize is with the freeze response, typically that is something where your mind and your body just go numb, where they don't have enough time to react. And I want to state this, and I do say this in my self-defense seminars, is this is usually when you know somebody. More times than not, because it's a state of you've already established trust with that individual. So then it's like, is this actually happening? This is my friend. They wouldn't be crossing those boundaries. So then there's that numb response where you don't respond at all. You just freeze. There's probably a lot of different lessons that you have experienced throughout your lifetime in chapters of personal, but also when we look at professional experiences. What are some of those different things that you learned along the way that you appreciate that you learned, but then also some of the lessons like, man, I wish I would have known that prior to the outcome?
Okay.
Loaded questions,
wish
man.
I could have known.
Loaded questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But something that I learned from is during one of accountability and how when you talked earlier about having your children around and being in big groups. So we worked an investigation where a child had got taken. And through that investigation, we had learned that, and one of the takeaways was that the child didn't know where to go, because they were in a mall and they went looking for somebody and actually went to the wrong person, and that person took them. So moving forward, coming up with situations to how make that better was that we talked about it as investigators and what could they have done, because mom and dad were asking the question, what could I have done? What could we do to make this not happen again? Because we had a good ending with it, but still traumatic. Kid was gone for like 5 hours. So, but we came up with the idea that either write it on your hand or put it in a note in the child's pocket put our name, our phone number on it, and then go to and instructed them, if you don't see mom and dad around, go find a security guard, go into a store and find a clerk and just say, I'm lost, and give them the note to be able to, instead of just roaming around the mall, because you just don't know. There are plenty of people that roam around in malls that are sharks, that are pedophiles, that are doing bad things to good people. So that's one of the things that we then implemented, my wife and I, with our boys. And then when we get together with groups, when we were traveling for hockey, for baseball, for basketball, whatever it is, that when we would go to the cities, go to the Mall of America, I would make sure that I told everybody, hey, if we're going to go in there, make sure that you put a note with your name and your cell phone in your kids' pocket. So in case we get separated, the younger ones, not the older ones, but the younger ones, if you get separated, it's a way that they can go and find somebody to try and eliminate the bad things happening.
Well, we look at that, and, that's a great piece of advice, because I know my son has a cell phone, but at the same point, what if their cell phone is gone? And we used to memorize individuals' numbers, our home number, all of our friends' numbers. It was like, yeah, what's that person's number? Boom, we just had it. We don't have it anymore. We don't have that level of memorization when it comes to knowing somebody's phone number. Oh, hold on, let me check. I'm going to go into my cell phone to see what it is. What happens if you don't have that? So it's very important for parents to understand is that don't assume that your kids know your phone number, because they probably don't. I know that through school, my youngest boys did. That was part of a piece that they had to know was, okay, what is your address and what is your parents' contact number, right? Which is great, because you don't assume that the school is going to train and do some of the training that we should be doing at home. But it's also a great piece where sometimes too, when a child is stressed, if they are separated from their parent, the likelihood of them trying to figure it out while under stress is going to probably be more challenging for them to be able to spit out the actual numbers and and sometimes names, because you think of the highest level of anxiety and fear that you may have experienced, you might just instantly shut off because of the situation.
Yeah, and kids, when they get scared, when they get nervous, they don't know what, they might not remember that number, So it was just something that was important to us, and to try and, our most important thing are our children. That's just, it goes without saying. And, as a dad, it's important. But for my wife, Mama Bear she could sacrifice herself for her children. There's no doubt in my mind that 99.9% of mothers out there are that way. And it's just, giving yourself the tools and the opportunity to stay relevant and pertinent, going through other things that we've learned, or, tips to move. We're coming into that part of, what are we, about 3 weeks away from the election. And it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that there is going to be some unrest.
Yes.
It's just, it doesn't matter if the right or the left, whoever wins, throughout. So, with civil unrest, it's important to be able to have a plan. What are you going to do at your house? Where, we can think back to 2021 or 20, whenever the riots were.
Yep.
And what do you have to do to keep your family safe? Where are you? Are we pertinent to here? We had some, what went on downtown, and then there was a march. It was peaceful, that went down 13th. But what if it didn't?
Right.
What if it rolled into West Acres and then into the residences that are on the north and the south of it? So what are you going to do? We've been through that. So, the key is always to make sure that you're self-sufficient for probably, I'd like to say, a month, 2 weeks, whatever, with the economy and with groceries, but still, you have to be self-sufficient. So with the water, canned goods, what are you going to do to protect your house? Is it that Ring camera? That could be good for people, non-lethal. Not saying it has to be a double-aught shotgun where you sit on the porch. There are plenty of things that you can do. But the key, the one thing that I've learned through 45 years of being from the Marine Corps to law enforcement, now into corporate security, is to have a plan, is to always have a plan, and think about, just sit around and spitball with your significant other, with your friends, wherever you are, on what would we do if, this is just shooting outside the box. What if, there's a riot in Dilworth? Not saying there would be, but you have to, Andy and I talked about that. We talked about with the boys, because it's no different than civil unrest than what they're going through in North Carolina and Florida with natural disasters. It's our domain. It's our house. It's our kingdom. How are you going to protect it to make sure that you're safe, your spouse is safe, and your kids are safe? So it's imperative to have a plan and to be able to work it out. So it's not just something you think of, oh, I'm going to do this. Well, there's no muscle memory. You're going to, in times of stress, you're going to regress to your lowest level of training. You're not going to just like immediately think, oh, now I can think all these things. No, stress will cause you to go to your lowest level of training. And if you've walked through things like in your house with a fire, if you're on the second or third floor, do you have a portable ladder? How are you going to get out? Safety things like that. Smoke detectors, we've all been through all of that. But it's just the importance of having a plan. We never went out and did an arrest without an arrest plan. We never, deploying forward when I was in Iraq or Afghanistan, when we went out on operations, we didn't just go jump in a Humvee and say, we're going to go out here and we're going to go look hunting for the Taliban. No, you have an operations plan, 5-paragraph order, situation, mission, SMEAC, situation, mission, evacuation action communications plan, a 5-paragraph order. So you have to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. But as we both know, hope is not a strategy.
No, it's not. And I think the key thing for most people to take away today too is have a plan. I think far too often we spitball things, or, we wing it in hopes that we're going to be successful if it ever happens. But when it comes to everything that we prepare for in life, when are we actually setting forth plans to stay alive? Because none of those other plans are going to matter if you haven't put forth the efforts, the time, and the training. And I think that's where we may fail at this point right now, a good key portion of us, where we're not looking at those key facets. You prep for your food, you prep for your job, but the reality is if you don't have life, then that preparation doesn't really matter, right? So it's key for you at this point in time. And I do feel like there's a lot of shifts going on. And it doesn't, we were talking earlier on the show, it's like, I don't care if you're left, I don't care if you're right. We have to be rational. We have to put emotion to the side and look at the fact of, we can see the news is clearly putting everything in front of us, not saying that it's correct, but there's different things where we can see that emotions are high, that there's a lot of distress within our country and within the world. So whether it's natural disasters, whether it's attempted assassinations, whether it's, you look at back to 2021, the different riots that we had, whatever it may or may not be, there are stressors. So when it comes to personal safety, awareness, so on and so forth, there has been an individual that 20 years ago, this story was from 20 years ago, this young female, when we look at UND, when we look at Drew Shadeen, that might be a very common name for most individuals. And you have shared the story with me, and I actually use this story a lot, John. When we look at sharks, when we look at predators, I want you to share that story, because I think it's important for us to look at situations that have happened to other individuals or people that we know, and how could this been a different outcome. So let's talk about Drew Shadeen's story.
When Rodriguez showed up at the mall, he first went into the Target and was standing in the Target, and a young co-ed blonde came into the Target, and he started following her. The video showed that he was following her in the store, up and down the aisles. He's on one side, she's in the other, in and out, and she would stop, he would stop. Then she got close to checkout and either got a phone call on her cell or stopped to talk. And before that phone call and that conversation basically saved her life, because they kept conversing and she was waiting, she was talking and talking. Rodriguez didn't wait. He got to a point where he was in there, and then he left, walked out, and then did the horrific thing that he had done. So it's about situational awareness and how close you could be to being a victim when you didn't even know it.
Oh, 100%. And I know there's been different situations too that have happened to me on a couple different occasions. However, too, with other individuals who have shared different stories. I had a female that was in Walmart that was sexual innuendos had been pushed forth towards her. She went to a different spot, so on and so forth. The gentleman at that, I shouldn't say gentleman, but the guy left at that point. A week later, she ended up going into Michael's. And if you're familiar with Michael's, it's more of like hobby store, so, different crafting stuff. The same individual popped up in that store a week later, and she's checking out in line, and he taps her on the shoulder and says, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." She leaves the store, clearly scared out of her mind. She sits in her vehicle. She waits 10 to 20 minutes. The guy never leaves the store. The very next week, she's in my self-defense seminar, and I'm like, "Did you call the cops?" Well, I didn't think about it because he didn't come out of the store. I said, call the store, have them go back and see if they still have the surveillance, and then make sure that they look in regards to documentation. So for individuals who are listening right now, I think it's very important for you to understand if something doesn't feel right, if you notice anything that is peculiar, like out of sorts, different behaviors, do not be afraid to call the police department and let them know that it's a non-emergency, that, okay, this is what I noticed. Would you mind going to check that out? It happened to me actually at Target, where there was a gentleman standing in the entrance. He was stepping forward to open the doors, stepping back, stepping forward, stepping back. I was in the store for 20 minutes, mind you. By the time that I was leaving, now he's by the exit, and he's doing the same thing. He was, bald guy, probably 5'9". I had all of his details. He had about a half bottle of Mountain Dew full in his right pocket. And thankfully, I had VIP parking that day. So after I left, I sat in my vehicle for probably 5 or 10 minutes just observing this guy. And what he would do is look out at the parking lot, scan it, step back into the store, step back out. So he has been doing this for a long period of time. I called Target and I said, I want to let you know that there's an individual that has certain behavioral patterns that you probably should send your security down to check. And they did. And there was a female that went down there. And I'm not disregarding females at all, because I know we've got a lot of BAs that can take care of business. But her mannerism, I could see from my vehicle, was very scared, nervous energy, so on and so forth. So she approached him quickly and then just went right back into the store. The guy never left. At that point is when I called the cops. I explained the situation. I said security has gone down to speak with him. However, I would appreciate if you would send an officer over, because this is not a normal behavior where he is scanning the parking lot. So please make sure. And then they came. But again, make sure that your head is always looking left, looking right, up, down, wherever you need to, and as long as it's not on your cell phone.
Exactly. And it's just so important. And we're not saying that you need to be hyper vigilant 24/7, 365. It'll burn you out, and you'll be only able to last for 2 weeks. But in locations that have a tendency where you can't control, you can't control that. So pay attention to, and it's easy for me to say as a guy who comes into the parking lot, but we've had this conversation.
Yep.
That's why your message is so important, and everything you do with self-defense is so important, because it's actually a woman talking about women, not problems, but concerns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just, I can't say it enough. Get off the phone. Just put it away. The book of face, TikTok, it'll be fine when you get to your vehicle. Lock the vehicle and drive away. But just for that 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes, just pay attention to what's happening, because it doesn't take any time for somebody to roll up next to you. And the advice I can give, if somebody wants to put you in a trunk, do not go in a trunk. Fight, scream, holler, try to get the attention, because once you get in there, it usually does not end well.
Well, you're typically moving from one crime scene to the next, right? So
exactly.
Don't be afraid to fight. And the thing is, too, I know some of the questions are, well, what if I forget this technique? Whatever it may or may not be. Do whatever you need to do to get out of that situation. I don't care if you bite, you scratch, so on and so forth. You're going to scratch, make sure you get some DNA underneath those fingernails. That's really what it comes down to. And anything and everything possible that you need to get out of that situation, do so. But first and foremost, the key is to avoid that situation the best way possible. If you hear a noise, turn and look. The worst thing that you can do is keep your back towards somebody. Never give your back. You can't fight. You don't have eyes on the back of your head. Turn and look to see what that noise is, because at the end of the day, your life is more important than what you can even imagine. So, John, I want to thank you so much. Again, look back at creating a plan for yourself and for your family. What does that look like? Be proactive. Don't be reactive is what it comes down to. So again, John Dalziel, thank you so much for coming on the show and what you bring forth within our community.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do. And if you're a lady out there, reach out to her. If you're looking for self-defense, her programs are incredible.
Thank you so much. Until we meet next week, get out there and define your fight.